And welcome back to the Over 40s Fitness Podcast. My name's Tristan Lowe, and here we are, going into the third week in March 2024, and it's my second discussion on aerobic fitness. I'm just going to read a passage from my study book about testing for aerobic fitness, and here we are. Okay. In order to move the body forward, i.e. walking, running, turning, pedals, lifting the body against its own gravity or stepping to overcome the resistance of water, swimming or rowing, the body must perform work. However, to sustain biological work, the body requires chemical energy in a form of ATP, also known as adenosine triphosphate. ATP is derived from the metabolism of carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and it requires oxygen for continued synthesis in the body. Unfortunately, the body cannot store oxygen. We take oxygen in and we give the gases out. Okay, so via the cardiorespiratory system, oxygen is breathed in and transported to working muscles to be used for energy production. During exercise, more work is performed, and more work often means more energy is needed, thus increasing the demand for oxygen. Eventually, a point is reached where the cardiorespiratory system cannot supply enough oxygen to meet increased energy levels. A point of maximum oxygen uptake has been reached and is universally recognized or expressed, as the VO2 max. Now, functionally, VO2 max reflects the ability of the lungs, heart, blood, and vascular system to transport oxygen, and the ability of the tissues to extract and use oxygen. Okay, and that's a study that's been updated. The last time I read about it was 2002. A person's VO2 max is a good indicator of how aerobically fit they are. Okay, in other words, an aerobically fit adult will be better able to take in, transport, and utilize oxygen compared to unfit individuals. Now, you may say to yourself, well, that goes without saying, but of course, as touched on the previous podcast, we find out how aerobically unfit we are at a time of need. Yeah, if you spend the most of your career, your profession, sat down at a computer screen all day, and then you sit down to go home after a day's work, and then sit down to have your dinner, and then lay down in bed to go to sleep at night, and repeat that five times a week for 48, 49 weeks a year, and you've got a 30 to 40 year career in work that is predominantly office bound, the most of your waking life then is spent sat down or lying down, unless of course you participate in some form of exercise. But on this occasion we're talking aerobic exercise: walking, swimming, cycling, rowing, now let's go on to the next chapter in this paragraph in this chapter. Compared to unfit individuals, aerobically trained adults who also live longer enjoy a better quality of life. Since no other fitness component offers the same benefits, it is important that aerobic fitness is measured by someone like a personal trainer or a professional, a tester at a laboratory or something like that. Okay, it is important to assess aerobic fitness because most adults are considerably less fit than they believe. All right. Furthermore, the health benefits of aerobic exercise cannot be stored. Protection from disease requires a lifelong commitment to aerobic exercise. Now, essentially what they're saying is, if you go for a walk on a Tuesday morning for an hour and your heart rate goes up, by up to 60, 70% because you're doing speed walking and there's some slight inclines as well, that's better than nothing. But continued aerobic exercise, and varied as well, and it hasn't got to be for a long period of time unless you're getting into endurance training for marathon running or something like that. But continued aerobic exercise throughout our lives is far more beneficial for a quality of life, and then hopefully a longer lifespan. Cardiorespiratory fitness and VO2 max are influenced by gender, age, hereditary, and of course the amount of exercise we undertake. Although there are high and low responders, vigorous exercise has been shown to increase the VO2 max by around 20% in sedentary individuals, regardless of age, gender, race, etc. For these reasons, it's been concluded that the level of aerobic fitness that is needed for reducing the risk of disease is not limited by the genetic makeup of most individuals. Okay, in layman's terms, you've not got to be Usain Bolt or Mo Farah to improve your aerobic fitness. You can't use the year you're born or your race or your gender to give yourself a reason to not participate in some form of aerobic fitness. We hear about a lot of inner city kids all around the world that don't swim. It's not that they can't swim, it's that they don't swim. They don't participate in any form of swimming activities. And that's not limited to inner city kids, just because they don't live next to the ocean or the sea, because they could go to a local swimming bath. So it's imperative that the kids' parents, or if not the school, then a sports club, teach kids how to swim at a young age. First and foremost, because it could save their life one day if they're in water, but more importantly, so they've got good health. All right, now let's talk about aerobic testing as a personal trainer. What we're not scientists, we're not working in laboratories, we work in personal training studios or private centres, and in some cases, big health clubs, franchise health clubs and leisure centres. But the principles should be the same, irrespective of where we work. We should actually take a client and give them a basic, safe, achievable aerobic exercise test. And the easiest one for us is a talk test, whereby we take a client, they get onto a treadmill and we put them on a flat walk and it goes into an incline, and at some point can even go into a jog. That's as long as they've got the tissue tolerance in the lower back, the hips, the knees, the ankles. But otherwise, we do an incline walk test. And then what I'll do, I'll ask them a question. Ordinarily, I'll ask them a question I know they know the answer to. I'll ask them what their home address is and can they read it out loud, including the postcode, because I know the client knows that. They haven't got to stop and think about what their home address and postcode is. And then to extend it, we'll have a conversation. And of course, I'll know if that client is unable to hold a conversation with me, they're still compass mentors because they're walking on a treadmill. It means they either don't want a conversation or they perceive to be short of breath. They're past sort of 70-75% of the maximum heart rate. And if they're at the very best they can give a one-word answer, that tells me at that moment then they're not cardiovascular fit, but they probably know that before they come in. Now, if we're going to a more measured test, so that was the talk test, okay, I'm going by what I can hear and also by what I can see, facial expressions, body language, and of course a discussion. The next thing is to do what's called in our line of work is a Cooper test. Now, a Cooper test is ordinarily done over a 12-minute time span, and that can be done on a treadmill or even in water. Okay, so I'm going to just touch on a Cooper test, of which from time to time I actually give myself as a trainer, and just to actually check on my own fitness levels. Again, it takes 12 minutes to do the Cooper test. You've not got to spend all day doing it. So, okay, now, and bearing in mind, when you take a Cooper test, you can use different measures. There's charts to go on to find out how well you've done. But let's look at a Cooper test, a 3-mile walk test. Okay. For many individuals, the Cooper 3-mile walk test provides an indication of aerobic fitness without requiring a maximal effort. As a result, the test is suitable for healthy males and females aged between 13 and 70 who have been actively walking for at least 6 weeks. If the course is accurately measured, the test can be performed indoors or outdoors. Participants should be instructed to walk 3 miles as fast as possible, but not breaking into a run. Time to completion can be used to assess aerobic fitness as indicated on a table like this. All right, now that's the 3-mile walk test. Now let's look at the Cooper 1.5 mile run test. Aerobic fitness can be measured using the 1.5 mile run test, first described by Cooper in 1968. The test can provide a valid measure of aerobic capacity, but it requires pacing and a sustained near maximal effort. For these reasons, at least 6 weeks aerobic training, preferably running, is recommended before attempting the test. Okay, so we'd have a client for 8 to 12 weeks, for 6 weeks, of some form of light aerobic training before we give them a Cooper 1.5 mile test. Okay, After warming up, a participant should be instructed to complete the 1.5 mile run test as fast as possible. The time is recorded to the nearest second and a gradual cool down will then follow. Okay, interpret test performance using the tables that we would use here. Okay, if the Cooper 1.5 mile test is performed on a treadmill, the incline should be set at 1% to replicate outdoors. Okay, so if you're doing a Cooper 1.5 mile run test indoors on a treadmill, remember it's not an incline test, so we put the treadmill at about 1%. In other words, just off its lowest, just off flat, and that sort of mimics outdoors as best we can. Now, again, if a client has got a baseline of cardiovascular fitness that he or she has built up on a bike or in a swimming pool, that doesn't always transition accurately to being on a treadmill, and the reason being the treadmill is almost full weight bearing, and they could have quite poor tissue tolerance in the lower back, the hips, the knees, ankles, feet, toes, whatever, and so forth. That therefore they might actually perform poorly or even stop the test before the 1.5 mile run is finished due to poor tissue tolerance. In other words, they start to get aches and pains. So because they've done their cardiovascular fitness on a rower or on a cycle or in a swimming pool. So there's different ways of doing it. Okay, I think the easiest one for a client to do would be on a treadmill, because everyone's got a treadmill indoors inside a gym, a health club, or a personal training studio. Whereas access to a swimming pool, you've generally got to go across town or out of town. All right. What's interesting as well is that I myself have been training for best part of 40 years in different elements of exercise. And when I gave myself a Cooper test in the swimming pool, yes, I got onto the chart, but I got at the low end of the chart, even though I had a quite reasonable baseline of cardiovascular fitness or aerobic fitness and physical strength. And the reason being, I only swim once or twice. I was only swimming a few times a year when you go on holiday. So I spent some time in the swimming pool and found out I worked my way up the chart. So you're trying to swim as many meters as you can in 12 minutes. And if you stop at the end of each length of the pool, the average swimming pool is 25 meters, Olympic pools are 50 meters long, the clock keeps ticking. And of course you want to get onto that chart, and it goes something like very poor, fair, average, good, very good, like a club standard swimmer. So I would advise you to give yourself two types of aerobic fitness testing. That would be a treadmill and a swimming pool, or a bike and a swimming pool, or outdoor walk or outdoor run and a swimming pool. And that way you have to bear in mind as well, when you're swimming, your technique might not be as good as you'd like it to be. So your technique alone may inhibit having a good time, a good time on the chart. So you've got to work on your technique. So perhaps take a lesson on how to actually breathe properly and what stroke. Ordinarily, I use a front crawl. I find a front crawl stroke to be one that I can focus on with goggles on, and I've not got to sort of think too much about where my bearings are in the lane. If you're doing backstroke, unless you're a club standard swimmer or a regular swimmer, and of course breaststroke, not very good if you've got a lower back pain or poor knees, but ordinarily front crawl. All right, so why should we always participate in aerobic or aerobic exercise? And again, that is for our body's ability to take in, transport and utilize oxygen. That's to actually work our heart and our lungs and our respiratory system, and by extension our circulatory system, the blood as well. Plus also it's good for your mental well-being. If you've done a 15, 20 minute, 30 minute walk or run on a treadmill, generally you feel good. You do feel tired when you come off, but it's for want of a better word, a good tired. You feel better, yeah? And it's hard sometimes to completely just pinpoint where you feel better. It's generally all over. You've increased blood flow and oxygen around the body. Sometimes I've had clients that have done some cardiovascular exercise and they say, yeah, I feel good, but they can't pinpoint exactly where. They say it's all over. And then I'll respond by saying, right, in that case, then you've got your nervous system switched on. You've got blood flow around the body. You're blood drunk. You're full of oxygen, which makes us feel good. It's a tide and it's a good tide. All right, now, cardiovascular exercise is often, I've seen it certainly in the last probably 15 to 20 years, can quite often be pushed back or by people that are going to get into shaping or getting their body into better shape, and they think, right, they've got to eat 3, 4, 5 meals a day, you've got to take supplements, and you've got to join your local health club and lift weights. Now those all things they're all very good, that's great, that's fine, that's going to get you physically stronger and to whatever degree help you look better. Okay, there's 100 benefits from that. However, what we do see is that with beginners, because they're aerobically unfit, they can't actually utilize the oxygen properly. And again, they cut short their training program. And it's not because of boredom, it's because they get tired quickly. And so therefore, finishing those sets of repetitions with strength training because they've done no baseline of cardiovascular exercise first. So I would say to you, if you're thinking of getting into strength training, then at the very least spend a good 1 to 3, even 4 weeks. And if you're looking to get into strength training to lose body weight as well, spend up to 4 weeks doing light and then sometimes vigorous cardiovascular exercise first. We're talking about raw beginners. Again, because if you're not used to sweating or being out of breath or challenging your nervous system, sparking the nervous system, it can come as a shock when you try and pick up a weight and you end up putting the weight back down again and trying to find an easier exercise and going and sitting on some machine or waiting to sit on another machine, and your body's cooling down and you're not getting a proper workout. So a mix of those, we talked about it in a previous podcast, could be peripheral heart action. In other words, you're doing strength sessions in circuits, 2 or 3 different exercises back to back and keeping your heart rate up. So it's cardiovascular challenging without having to run on a treadmill or sit on a rower. And if you're stuck for time and equipment, that's quite a good thing to do. All right. So if you look at these, for those of you watching, the equipment to my left and right, these are TRX systems, TRX training suspension systems. And as a trainer, I use these regularly with clients. And of course, there's strength training, whilst at the same time, we can go from one exercise to another. We can transition from a leg exercise to a back exercise, chest or shoulders very quickly. So essentially it's cardiovascular exercise. All right, okay. My name's Tristan Lowe and the Over 40s Fitness Podcast. We're going to come back next week with a new subject matter about the 3rd into the 4th week in April. Thanks for watching and listening. Please subscribe and share, and we'll talk about another element of fitness. Talk soon. Thanks for watching.